by Keith had the effect from that back of the van with snow, wind, hailstones. Somebody said it looked like something out of the Russian Revolution. The masses marching across whatever the squares were at that particular time. Well, I think, Keith's explaining he could have said a lot more, and I know a lot more, particularly he didn't have time to develop the points of how it swept the whole of the building sites in the major construction areas up and down the country. At least 20 sites, probably more, came out on strike as a direct result of what they could see on television. Yes, class consciousness is sometimes mixed, and the class struggle is never chemically pure. But I think without the intervention of Keith and others, who knows what would have happened. But I think it's absolutely clear now that the working class has scored a big victory. And his last point about the need for fighting trade union leaderships in society is an excellent introduction to the next speaker, which is Jerry Hicks, the left candidate for the Amicus General Secretary section of Unite at this over the next period. Jerry.
Well, I think I'd have rather spoke before, Bill, after that incredibly inspiring speech. Follow that, I suppose, is what I said. The Derek Simpson bit being described as the sensible candidate made me smile, because he was once described also as not only going to give a headache to Tony Blair, and part of my language, because I'm just paraphrasing, he was going to give him a fucking migraine. But he became their Anodine Extra, is the truth, or Mogadon. So that I love this venue. I've been here a number of times and listened to a number of fantastic speakers. And it's the Friends Meeting House, of course. And I know that I'm amongst friends. I recognise this as a meeting. And if it's a house, it's probably the size of Derek Simpson's. I don't know about that. I'm delighted, absolutely delighted to be here this evening for two reasons. The first reason is I desperately wanted to hear from Keith and the views of this meeting, the Lindsey Oil dispute, the strike itself. The second reason why I'm delighted, if I'm to be honest, is probably the biggest reason why I'm delighted, is I'm a candidate in the election for General Secretary of Amicus, and if I weren't, I probably wouldn't be invited to speak. But candidate I am. Now, I want to mention that, of course, but before I do, I'm going to indulge myself, and perhaps indulge all of us, and free our minds up for what was and has been an incredibly exciting period. Anybody who doesn't think that was exciting, what's just happened, and what hangs in the balance, what could come, really is quite dead in the ill of feeling. You know, we read about things, the big disputes and the way they boil up and explode. We've seen France, haven't we, recently, with 1 million people on strike. We saw Greece. But, you know, people always used to say, yeah, but that's over there. That's over there. They would do that. This was over here. And that's what made it so exciting. And to have heard the headlines, as we did, and read the press and see the media and the TV, you'd have thought that it had come out of the blue. Out of the blue, my ass. This volcano has been rumbling on for years under the Posted Workers Directive. Cobbled up in the EU, the big business class, the big trading class of the EU, to reduce the rights of workers, to exploit workers, to increase the profits. The Posted Workers Directive. It's Lindsey Oil Refinery came out of the blue. No way! It was years ago. Somebody will put me right. 2-3 years ago, the Irish Ferries dispute was about the Posted Workers Directory. In construction, it wasn't Lindsey Oil. I mean, I know I've been on 2 demonstrations in Stayford. This, in construction, this volcano has been rumbling on for months and months and months, and to our shame, To our shame, our union leadership prevaricated, did nothing, nothing at all, offered no hope. I'll tell you how I know that in particular. Because they were forced after a stewards' forum, a very good stewards' forum in Conway Hall, forced to do something, say something. Okay, then we'll have a demonstration in Staithorpe. I think it was January the 15th or the 19th. We'll have a demonstration. And we'll provide some money, is what they said. For half of the industry is unemployed, so we'll pay your petrol trinkets. And they put it on the website, which is quite nice for the police to look at. They probably rung them up anyway. And why I say that is when I got there, a little late, 6:30, a lot of people had been there since 5 a.m. We were not only outnumbered by the police, but of course outgunned. I'm sure they had them somewhere. Out-truncheoned, out-dogged, out-horsed, out-vanned. We were corralled. Corralled, not even on the pavement. It was a little bit of hardcore and the rest was a field. It was pouring with rain. It was freezing cold. The union turned up without the megaphone, whether the front fell off or not. And of course with no cash for people who'd come from all over the country, a lot of which were unemployed and paid out of their own pockets. And the police were so well informed that they said, look, this is a demonstration. You're free to demonstrate over there, corralled in this pen. But we weren't even allowed 6 pickets because it wasn't official. So the cars went through and the trucks went through and the heads went down. That's what was happening. And that's where it was going. And do you know, I looked around and there were fantastic people there. And I knew 1 or 2 of the leading stewards, and they knew something different had to be done, and something different was done. There was more done in 5 days, in 5 months, by our union leadership, by bringing this dispute, this volcano, into an eruption, so that the bosses, the government, the EU legislation, our anti-youth laws, were all caught in the lava flow. And I give great credit to the fact that the strikers there and to the Socialist Party especially were there to ensure what could have been 2 ways it could have gone, couldn't it? Easily. By the way, the British jobs for British workers, that wasn't even Gordon Brown's idea. Yeah, he said it 2 years ago, but Derek Simpson said it a whole year before. He was talking about UK jobs for UK workers, to his shame. But our union's absence with the banners, our union's absence with the call for a national strike, that's what made it in the balance. That's what made it the banner, the politics, of course, a vacuum, of course, so it was filled. Instead of the red flags of Amicus or Unite, it was filled with others. But, I think, in fact, I know, that there comes a time when silence is absolute betrayal. And that's what we experience from our union leaderships. But, the democracy of it all. Let's just look at democracy for a moment. I'm involved in the election. That's pretty democratic, I guess. Although I had to force the incumbent, kicking and screaming, to the ballot box, and I'll mention that in a moment. But you voted. You had a mass meeting, you had a discussion, you had a debate, you made a decision, and you voted. What finer democracy can you have than that? And you probably voted every single day to continue that dispute, to carry on. And yet it's described as unlawful. Well, how can that be? How can that democracy? Workers' discussion, workers' debate, workers' decision. A democracy of a show of hands is the finest democracy, and that's what I support. It was criminalised. Criminalised only 25 years ago. There's probably some people in this room who aren't even the age of 25. I can't claim to be that myself. Criminalised by the